After watching Fate Zero, I decided to go ahead and watch Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blades Works. Not to be confused with Fate Stay Night Real Tenua, or Twin Tails. UBW is an anime I very much enjoyed my time with. It was fun, had good action, and most importantly has Rin Tosaka, who as we all know is the bestest girl. I mean, Sakura is good, she's cool, she's got purple hair, and all she says is senpai. Doesn't really do much in the anime, but you know, she's still pretty good. Although sadly, she's no latex Sakura like in the Studio Dean Fate Stay Night path. Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works is about the 5th Holy Grail War, a battle royale between 7 different powerful servants and their masters which enter a war to claim the Holy Grail. Rin Tosaka, a mage herself, enters the Holy Grail War hoping to obtain the most powerful of servants, the Saber class, but is instead given the brutish Archer class. Now with Archer, Rin hopes to take the ultimate prize for herself, but things don't go as planned when Shiro Emiya unknowingly enters himself into the 5th Holy Grail War and summons the Saber class. At an impasse, both Rin and Shiro make an agreement to fight the Holy Grail War together against the 5 other classes. Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works, not to be confused with the 2006 Studio Dean version. Fate Stay Night UBW is based on the sometimes erotic visual novel released in 2004 of the same name. This anime adapts one of the 3 parts within the game with 24 episodes and 2 seasons. The series is directed by Takahiro Miura, who has directed anime like The Garden of Sinners, Chapter 6, and Today's Menu for the Emiya family. Other than that, he's worked pretty much on Ufotable Anime as key animation. Speaking of Ufotable, this anime is from that studio, who are known for the Garden of Sinners series, the Fate series, the Tales of anime series, and the God Eater anime series. The story of UBW is quite exceptional. It's a well-paced battle royale anime with a lot to like. To start off, the story is rich in detail, taking time to delve into certain facets of the story and fully explore them. But they also seem to explore many other different elements and themes throughout the series. For example, this anime has elements of slice of life and somewhat typical romance, albeit satisfying romance, between Shiro Emiya and Rin Tosaka. These things helped carry the first half of this series to some extent, and at times were examples of how good the writing was in this anime. Generally, the first half is more akin to something you'd see in a visual novel. It's full of great character interactions and a romance to set the stakes for the second half. But while we're here, as my final point on the romance, this isn't as heavy as, say, something like Fate Stay Night. In this series, the romance is much more paced out and very well written. This is probably so far the best romance in the mainline Fate series right now. That being said, this isn't Fate romance either. This is just an icing on the cake to help the story develop more naturally and more realistically. Now, to continue on, let's talk about Season 1 and Season 2. I would say that Season 1 sets the stage and develops the characters with great execution with few to minor hiccups. Season 2, however, is where the anime really starts to come together and pay off as the season develops. Things left dormant but introduced in Season 1 are now fully fleshed out and have their stories told or finished. Things like Rin's backstory, Shiro's character arc, and even the servants being fleshed out like Berserker's backstory and Saber's. This second season is a brilliant payoff to everything the first season sets up, and as things begin to unravel, we are treated to some really nice storytelling that left a lasting impression on me. But before we move on, I do want to talk about one more element the show dabbled with, and that is the comedy. So, this series is much more lighthearted than its prequel, Fate Zero, but still darker than its visual novel path and the 2006 anime. This anime, for the most part, is very serious and has a very defining tone of a drama with action. This, to me, fits the series better than, say, Fate Stay Night, but also as fitting as Fate Zero, but because this series, to me, has many more things that favor a dramatic action tone. Rin Tosaka, for example, is better as a serious character in a serious setting than Fate Khalid or Fate Stay Night. That's just the kind of character that excels with this kind of storytelling. But to my surprise, the show does introduce elements more in line with the Studio Dean's Fate Stay Night as well, which do in fact end up working. I'm not going to spoil you on them because they come as a complete surprise surprise, but the comedy in this really helps relieve some of the tension the serious mood sets up. It also doesn't mess with the serious tone at all, and doesn't boil down to incredibly sense of issues being turned into a joke either. The comedy does not interfere. Like the romance, it's an icing on the cake, and it's simply there to let the viewer not get overwhelmed, and it always comes at a time where you'd least expect it. The characters in the Fate series are somewhat legendary in many ways, both in their own worlds, and I guess ours as well. We all know who Saber is, we all know who Rin, Gilgamesh is, etc. These are staples of the series, and there are reasons you've likely heard their names. Just about every character in this anime is written really well. For example, Archer may be one of the most mysterious servants in the series, but he's nuanced and well characterized from the get-go. He's apprehensive of Shiro and doesn't like him at all, and he doesn't really have a nice temper. But he also does seem like the kind of person you'd not want to get on his bad side either. Another example of a good character is Rin. Side note, love you too, Abi. She is actually the best example because she is right off the bat the character who shows, well, the most character. She's cranky, has a bad attitude, really popular, rich, attractive, and is hella good at doing the magic stuff. You immediately know what to expect with Rin Tosaka, and while I understand the complaints about her, she is still a very well written and very, very good character. Now let's take a trip down memory lane and revisit something from my Fate Zero review, and while this does improve, it's not by any great leaps or bounds. I'm of course talking about the weakest characters in this show, which, once again, is Saber and now Shiro. Now, Saber I will get through quickly. I talk way more about Saber in my Fate Zero review, so you should go check that out right now if you haven't already. But Saber is an 8 out of 10 character, while every other servant are 10 out of 10 characters. Saber, while still being very well done, does seem a little bit more plain to the others. She has no distinct edge like all of the other servants do, which I do feel makes her somewhat unique in this series and does fit her character, but ultimately makes her character immediately less interesting than, say, Gilgamesh or Archer. As for Shiro, I feel his problem is more in line with Saber's, but Shiro's is less prominent. Shiro is the lawful good master, like how Saber is the lawful good servant. His reasons for doing everything he does in this series are just. They make sense. He's well characterized, but he's more akin to your basic shonen hero like Naruto or Tien Shinhan. He's the white meat babyface, the John Cena of the Fate franchise, and this just makes him less interesting. You know exactly where his arc ends from the beginning of the show. There is no room for character changing growth. That being said, in the Studio Dean Fate Stay Night, Shiro's character fits, I'd say, way better in that anime. But I'm digressing a little bit. You'd have to check out my Fate Stay Night review, which will be coming out soon, if not already. And he's not a bad character because of any of this, but just like Saber, he sticks out like a sore thumb at some points in this show. I think from what you've seen so far of this anime in this video, you know by now how great the visuals are, but just in case you need some more convincing, we're going to talk about it a little bit. And, well, the art is superb. It retains the feel of the original while bringing out a darker side to it. While not as dark as Fate Zero, UBW still has that underlying dark feeling that Ufotable bring to the table. Personally, I enjoy this look much more than, say, Fate Stay Night Path. But of course, we can also talk about the background designs. They're very well detailed, which is expected of the studio. Tosaka's mansion, Shiro's house, these are staples of the series, and they're faithfully done here in this anime. As for character designs, they are also faithful. Saber looks like a knight, Lancer is handsome, and Sakura has purple hair. There are many things to like about the designs. In my opinion, Ufotable are the perfect people to do the franchise. So, if you've seen my Fate Zero review, if you haven't, you should, I'm going to say generally the same thing I'm saying in that review. So, this part is going to be a little bit shorter. Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works has some of the best fights in anime right now. The fighting has weight, looks brutal, well-paced, well-directed. It has impact. You're not going to get anything like a Ufotable animated Fate fight. There is just something about this studio when it comes to animating the Fate series that not many can hope to touch. And while Studio Dean does come close in certain ways, there is nothing like seeing the Gates of Babylon or Sakura's purple hair animated. You just have to see it to believe it. Once again, check out my Fate Zero review, as much of the talking points here are in that review as well, so I'm going to truncate this segment. The score in UBW is also very well done. It's probably one of the better scores in this series, as unlike Fate Zero, it's the most consistent out of the two. Not that Fate Zero was bad, but UBW is always good at keeping the score interesting and fluid. The songs are deep, influential to the going-ons with the animation, and provides our story with the perfect soundtrack for our characters. In the English dub for UBW, we have some returning cast from the Studio Dean version like Elia, Reen, and Gilgamesh. But there are some cast changes I felt I didn't like as much looking back. Shiro's voice actor is fine, but I do prefer Dean's voice actor for Shiro much more than what we have in this one. Now, I do understand Studio Dean's version has some really jank voice acting at times, but I like the sound of the voice. I prefer the sound of that voice, so look at it from that perspective, not as simply is the acting better in this or that. Otherwise, this is another perfect casting for my ears. In fact, every other change is either welcomed or expected. Sakura's voice actor is a welcome change, which helps with her purple hair, and Saber's change is fine as well. As for some more returning cast, Rin Tosaki you just had to get right, and the one into the Studio Dean version is the voice of Rin. You will not convince me. Other minor ones like Fujine are returning cast as well, and they're great. This is also one of those dubs that don't sound like a dub, and more just like the Japanese version, but just in English, which is an achievement. Usually that means it's the best of the best in terms of dubs. Unlimited Blade Works is yet another Fate anime that blew me away. From the story, to the characters, to the action, I wish I could experience it all over again and again. There aren't many anime like this one right now. If there are, it certainly can't quite compare to it at the very least. But while this anime is incredibly unique and well made, there are still problems with the show that do add up, with Shiro and Saber being weak compared to pretty much every other major character. But still, this is an anime I think you need to experience right now if you haven't already. Don't sleep on this anime. I promise you, it's worth every second. Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works gets a 9 out of 10. But I ask you guys, what did you think about Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works? Love to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Thank you all for watching my review. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon button. So thank you guys for watching my video. I appreciate all the support you give me, and I will see you in next time.